is it?
Yeah. See if there's a lag.
Yes, there will be a lag.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of people waiting and then watching. Move to A first. So no one's watching at the moment.
Bothering me. So I don't have the questions printed out. That's really far away.
And that's not going to be enough.
Oh, okay, good. Just checking.
Before you do it on that one.
It's not going there, is it? We'll have to go to pen drive. Leave it there if you can. Should we raise this up a bit?
You want to?
Yeah. Might pick up the mic better as well.
Yeah, it seems okay.
Okay. Is that
That's who's watching.
okay?
Yeah.
Good. I should probably say hello. Hello. Hello, if there's anybody early at the door joining us. Thanks for being with us. We're just doing all sorts of tech. Well, I say we. I'm not. I'm sure the tech is ready, and I'm on standby in case anybody is telling me on various different ways that they can't tune in for whatever reason. So yeah, thanks for bearing with us until start, which will be at 7 o'clock. So make sure you've got a drink in your hand or ready, or whatever that might be. A cup of peppermint tea, I don't know, whatever it takes a fancy. Your snack. Hi, Jenny. Oh, thanks. Yes, let's use the chat. Or is that quite annoying if I'm typing it? You can all hear. How are you doing? You might have to excuse Tim. He's got the hay fever. He might have to run off and sneeze lots, which I'll find quite scary because I might do something silly and not be able and lose you. So I'll have to keep my wits about me. What's the weather like where you are? We've got a very warm afternoon, actually. So we've got the back door open, and the next door neighbour was trimming the hedge, which I thought was going to be quite loud, but I think they've stopped now. So that's quite good news. Are we loud enough? Can you hear us okay? Do I need to get closer? We will let you know how this is going to run presently, but we'll wait until 7 o'clock and just do a quick run through, just that everybody feels happy and comfortable. But it's probably better to wait until anybody who wants to join is joining until we do that. Otherwise, you'll all have to hear it twice. I just had a message from somebody saying that 7 o'clock is in the middle of bedtime for their kids, so they have to join in after the event. So I don't know. We did our last pub quiz a bit earlier and felt like that was too early for people. And so if we do another one, we might have to do a show of hands of which is better. Anyway, hope you've all had a good day. I was going to wait till the quiz officially starts until I open my beverage, but maybe I don't have to.
I've not waited.
No, that's what I did. But I didn't expect that to happen. Wonder if anybody's been swatting up and doing their research at all. I went into my big First World War women box of books today and realised there's one I'd started that I'd never finished. So that was a good find. That means I've got a good book to look forward to, which is good news. And I've got some down here that I'm going to share with you. I had to be really careful and hide the answers away in the question sheet so that I didn't give anything away unwittingly. But yes, I've got my big pile of books here of relevant ones to the quiz. But I should probably wait till the answers to start sharing them in case I give too many clues. Yeah. I think the video quality is a bit better than when we did the Florence quiz. We've had a new router fitted. Fitted? Do you fit a router? We've had a new router. We've just had a new router. And yeah, I think that might have made some improvement, but we still don't have a very good upload speed. So I'm hoping that this is good enough, and you're getting as much as you need. Hey. I dug out an old friend as well earlier. It's hab time. I debated. Oh, there's something inside it. I debated whether I should do the full costume, but I realised it's been in a bag for a while. It's a bit unfortunate. But yes, I realised that it's really too hot for that. So yeah, it's really too hot even for the hat, to be honest. But I like it, so maybe the answers, it will get a bit cooler later for the answers. Dear. Oh, we've got more people joining us. Hello, people who are joining us. Feel free to make your comments and let us know where you are, what you're doing. You having a beer or a cup of tea or dinner or something else? What are you doing? Let us know where you are and what you're doing, what you're planning to drink along with the quiz. We are nearly ready to get started. I am poised with my bottle opener.
You've already done that. Okay.
Hey, 7 o'clock. So I am going to be having myself one of these no petticoats beers. Does that come out the right way round for you? Well, just take my word for it. It's no petticoats beer and I'm going to enjoy it. Brewed with, well, a Downton brewery beer from just down the road from us. We'll keep the bottle opener to hand. You never know how it's going to go, do you? So cheers. Do let us know what you're drinking and eating and what you're up to. It's terrible. I think I'm out of practice. I'm not really drinking the ale these days, but this one's had a little chill on it. So yes, Tim's going to take you through the rules because that's the bit I'm not very good at. Those of you that know me know that I'm not very good at rules.
Yeah. So of course, nature of an online pub quiz is it's really easy to cheat because you can just Google anything.
Oh, no.
To be honest, if you want any vaguely honourable score, I think cheating is essential. I think I've got about 2 questions right. So what
You've never seen the show though.
Yeah, not very often. So what we'll do is there are 7 rounds.
There are 7 rounds.
Yep. They're all 6 questions each.
Yes, they are.
So we'll go through them. what I'll do is I'll post the questions into the chat on YouTube, and I'll also try and update the webpage. So it's probably better if you're watching it from the MPH quiz page. It's actually probably better to watch it in YouTube rather than from the page, because it won't show the chat. So if you go onto the web page, there are a couple of hyperlinks in there. So the first paragraph, for example, has got online pub quiz. If you click on that, it'll show you, it'll view that in YouTube rather than on the page. If you've got a YouTube account or a Google account of any kind, so a Gmail account, something like that, then you can comment onto the YouTube page. I don't think you can do it if you don't have a Google account, or you can post comments on the web page. Right at the very bottom, there's a comments box. Also, on that page, there's a table which is for the answers. You don't have to use it. You don't have to mark yourself or anything. What we'll do is at the end we'll give you sort of 5 minutes or so, that if you want to be competitive and you can submit your questions by email, then if you can do it with that table, cut and paste it into Excel or Word or something, that'd be great. And then after about 5 minutes for that, and then we'll go through the questions, and then we'll mark the submitted answers afterwards.
Do whatever you want to do that's going to make it fun and interesting for you. There's no hard and fast. We don't mind if anybody submits or doesn't submit, and just enjoy the fact that hopefully you find out about some incredible women that you might not have heard of before. So that's what this is about.
Okay, I think that's
hopefully clear enough. Can somebody give us a thumbs up if we are loud enough, just so that I know you can hear okay, before we get stuck in to the first round. So I'm really lucky to have had 7 expert academic authors, researchers, who have very kindly put together a round each with 6 questions. So I'm really grateful, and I'll tell you a little bit about those people. Can you open Jenny in the other thing, because it's got her intro, which I forgot. So the first series of questions is going to be about women munition workers, and they've been put together by Dr. Jenny Richardson. So Jenny's research for her PhD focused on the workwear worn by female munition workers during the First World War. Over the period of her research, she has amassed a large collection of original postcards. I've seen some and been very envious. So postcards and ephemera from the period on which her thesis rested. She's currently a visiting lecturer at Middlesex University and working on a book proposal, which is very exciting. So here are Jenny's 6 questions. Number 1, what year was the Shell scandal brought to the public's attention? This is multiple choice. So what year was the Shell scandal brought to the public's attention? Was it A, 1914, B, 1915, C, 1916, or D, 1917? I'll have a little pause whilst you think about that one. So Tim will paste at the end of each round the questions in so that we don't have to keep repeating them, and you can pick up any that you might have missed. Number 2, why were munitions workers sometimes known as Canary girls? Another multiple choice. Jenny's very kind. Was it A, because they sang all the time during their shifts? B, because they were the first to faint if there was any poisonous gas? C, because they turned yellow because of the chemicals they worked with? Or D, because of the colour of their uniforms? So why were the munition workers sometimes known as Canary girls? Question 3. Who wrote the fictional novel Munition Mary? So who wrote the fictional novel Munition Mary? It's gone down a bit so I can, I can finally drink it. And question 4 for round 1. Munitionette football teams became quite the phenomenon during the First World War, with one team being particularly famous. Lily Parr played for this team, but what was its name? If you've watched No Petticoats Here, the whole show, you might know the answer to this one. And question 5. Which author coined the phrase devil's porridge after seeing one of the processes in explosive production during a visit to the munition factory at Gretna? I don't think I did that very well. Let's give that another go. Which author coined the phrase devil's porridge after seeing one of the processes in explosive production during a visit to the munition factory at Gretna? So somebody's arrived and said that you're a bit late. So we're just going to post at the end of each round the questions into the chat on YouTube, which you're obviously on board with. So please don't worry, catch up where we are and you can go back. So question 6 on round 1. Upon entering the factory, the munition workers had to change into their workwear. They were then searched before going onto the factory floor. If they were found in possession of anything metallic or matches, they would be fined. But what was the fine? Was it A, 5 pence, B, 40 shillings, C, 10 shillings, or D, 3 bob? If I'm placing any emphasis on anything, please think nothing of it, because I don't have the answers in front of me, so don't let me drive you to one more than the other, hopefully. So Tim's just going to paste those, and we'll take a quick pause so people can have a read of anything they didn't get so far. There is not a football round, I'm afraid, in answer to that comment. I can see a couple of other people joining us. Don't worry if you're late. Tim's posting the questions for round 1, which we've just finished, into the chat. So you can catch up on any question you might have missed, or the whole round if you've just joined us now. All good?
You've got a character limit.
There is a character limit for each post. So they're going to come into the live chat on YouTube bit by bit. So bear with us. Have a slurp of your drink if you feel so inclined. And yeah. Maybe think of other things you know about munition workers that didn't come up. So I've been lucky enough to hear Jenny talk about her work. That's Dr. Jenny Richardson who put that round together, and found it fascinating. So if there's any person who knows a lot about munition workers and what they wore, Jenny is on Twitter, so you can find her there. And I've put the biog for all of our question masters. Yes, Jenny, we are pushing the tech, pushing the YouTube. Yes. Yeah, I've put the biogs for the quiz masters. So if you found this link, you might have found it through the website. So head over there. Oh dear, this is going to be a little bit slower. Never mind.
Let's put it on the webpage for them.
Yeah. I'll move on to the second round, because no doubt some people are looking forward to that. And Tim's going to put all of the questions onto the website so that you've got them all in one place. So if you go to louisejordan.co.uk /NPH-quiz, then that should take you there. But let us know if you're having any difficulties and we will get through that somehow. So could you open the round Catherine put together for her bio? So this is the second round. It's called Soldiers and Spies, and it's been put together by Catherine Atwood, who is an author. And I think I'm not going to spoil anything by giving you a quick flash of Catherine's book, which I had when I was researching for putting No Petticoats Here together. So that might, if you know your image as well, you've just had a bit of a clue, but I think we can all move past that. So I can recommend Catherine's books. I'm not going to show you the contents page, but each chapter, it's a short-ish chapter, and it summarises the women that she writes about. And I think it's really engaging. And I lent it to a couple of young people when I was doing youth songwriting projects about women in the First World War, and I found it that they responded really well to it. So Catherine Atwood is the author of 5 young adult collective biographies about women in war, including Women Histories of World War I, which I just showed. You can find her on Twitter. She is at Kate_Atwood, and she's on Instagram at Kate_Atwood7, and she's also on Facebook, and she has a website. So that's all on the biog section of the No Petticoats quiz on my website. So here are Catherine's 6 questions, round 2, Soldiers and Spies. Question 1, who was given, oh, I'm glad I didn't get too much into my beer yet, because the pronunciations are going to be tricky for me. Who was given the name Nashi Engelskinya by her fellow soldiers? I actually didn't know this, but I had a guess and was lucky, because I figured that she'd be part of this quiz. Question 1, who was given the name Nashi Engelskinya by her fellow soldiers? Question 2, which English radiographers were awarded by the Italian government for their efforts during the Battle of Gorizia? Please, again, excuse my pronunciation. I'm sure Tim's got something to say about it. So we're looking for 2 English radiographers for that question. And question 3, when this doctor offered her services to the RAMC, she was told, "My good lady, go home and sit still." If you know Petticoats, you might clues in the title of No Petticoats as well, as the quote goes on. You might have a stab at that one. So when this doctor offered her services to the RAMC, she was told, "My good lady, go home and sit still." Question 4 of round 2, who created the Russian Women's Battalion of Death? Yes. Question 5, this young woman became the first female officer in the Romanian army during the war and was killed in action against the Germans right after uttering the following words: "Move forward, boys, don't give up, you are with me." So a young woman who became the first female officer in the Romanian army during the war and was killed in action against the Germans right after uttering, "Move forward, boys, don't give up, you are with me." And question 6, the last question of round 2, Sir John French said the following to this French agent: "We have thousands of men to fill the vacant places in the trenches, but not many who could take your place." And if you know Petticoats here. Sir John French said the following to this French agent: "We have thousands of men to fill the vacant places in the trenches, but not many who could take your place." So that is the end of round 2. We will move on fairly swiftly to round 3, which is Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. I'm taking a slurp. This is thirsty work, hosting a pub quiz. Oh, it's not about how many you get right. Just looking at the comments, it doesn't matter how many you get right. It's how many things you learn by taking part. I think that is what I always take away from a pub quiz. I've never won one in my life. So probably summarises my attitude fairly well. Could we have the next set of questions from the blog?
So that rounds up on the web page. No.
Brilliant. So we're not putting it in the chat because it's taking a long time and stopping me from seeing any comments. So it's going up on the website louisejordan.co.uk/NPH-quiz. So round 3 is put together by Samantha Philo-Gill. She's an independent postdoctoral writer and researcher, currently looking at poetry and prose about the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WAC, as I'll be referring to them from now on. So she's on Twitter at WW1WAC, WW1WAAC, and her book on the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps and its history is published by Pen and Sword. Not yet in my collection, I must admit, and that needs to be swiftly corrected. I remember meeting Sam at a No Petticoats Here gig, and I'm not sure that she had published it at that stage, so that's probably why it's missing from my collection. Will be resolved. So round 3, Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Question 1, the first women to be enrolled into the British Army joined the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WAC. In which year was the corps formed? Multiple choice. Was it 1915, 1916, 1917, or 1918? So the first women to be enrolled in the British Army joined the WAC. In which year was the WAC formed? 1915, 1916, 1917, or 1918? Question 2. What is the name of the first Chief Controller overseas of the WAC, who later became a Commandant of the Women's Royal Air Force in the First World War and Chief Controller of the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the ATS, in the Second World War? So we're looking for the name of the first Chief Controller overseas of the WAC, who later became Commandant of the Women's Royal Air Force in the First World War and Chief Controller of the Auxiliary Territorial Service in the Second World War. That is a lot of words to get round. Question 3 of round 3, the WACs, as in the women, the WACs of the Corps, carried out a range of work whilst in France, from telegraphy to cooking, grave maintenance to motor driving. Women in one work category had the nickname of Hush WACs. What section of the British Army did they work for? So the WACs carried out a range of work in France, from telegraphy to cooking, grave maintenance to motor driving. Women in one work category had the nickname of Hush WACs. What section of the British Army did they work for? I'm going to turn the screen so I can read it a bit easier. I think I'm tongue-tying myself. Question 4. Rumours of WAC prostitution and pregnancy in France led to a commission being sent to investigate, and its report exonerated the women. Under which law could people be prosecuted in the UK for spreading false reports? Question 5. 9 WACs who died in a bombing raid in Abbeville were the first women in the British military to die on active service. 3 WACs received a medal for their actions during the raid. Which medal was it? And question 6 of round 3, the final question of this round. Which cathedral houses the WAC and the Queen Mary's Army Auxiliary Corps Book of Remembrance, their standard, and a commemorative stained glass window? Multiple choice. Was it Salisbury Cathedral, Guildford Cathedral, Canterbury Cathedral, or Winchester Cathedral? So which cathedral houses the Book of Remembrance, standard, and commemorative stained glass window to the WAC and Queen Mary's Army Auxiliary Corps? So Tim's going to paste those up on the website. Good. How are you all doing? Are you enjoying? I've got an itchy eye. Are you enjoying yourselves, most importantly, and finding things interesting? So round 4 is going to be the Women's Institute in World War I, put together by none other than the wonderful Jenny Waugh, who is tuning in right now. I mean, I would say that if you weren't, Jenny, by the way. So to tell you a bit about Jenny, Jenny is a community historian for hire, I like that, who has a particular interest in researching and bringing to light the hidden histories of women. Throughout the First World War centenary commemorations, Jenny worked with Professor Maggie Andrews to develop and research a range of local history projects in Worcestershire, which looked particularly at the impact of new home front volunteer opportunities and the growth of the WI on the lives of rural women and of all classes. Together, Jenny and Maggie published How the Pershore Plum Won the Great War. And if that isn't a brilliant title for a book, I challenge you to come up with a better one. And that's published by the History Press in 2017. So go get your copy. And Jenny wonderfully included a lovely image, which I didn't check whether I could share. So that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But we all love a good image, don't we? Right. Round 4, the Women's Institute in World War I. Question 1. What nationality was Madge Watt, the prime motivator for the establishment of the Women's Institute in the UK during World War I? So what nationality was she? And question 2. What's going on there? Question 2. Where in the UK was the first Women's Institute established on the 11th of September 1915? Oh, I love these questions. They're so educational, even if they're giving you more information whilst asking you the question. That's my favourite kind of pub quiz.
So I'll be very naughty and just quickly paste that image on the pub quiz page.
Jenny, don't rat us out. Yeah. Just so you get to see it. Good idea. And then we'll take it down just in case. Oh, it's from the WI website, so I'm presuming that we are. What am I drinking? Good question. I am drinking this wonderful Petticoats beer. So when we set up, or when we created the project No Petticoats Here, I toured it a couple of times and then took it back out. And we decided on one of the later tours to work with Downton Brewery, which is just down the road from us, so our local brewery, to basically label up one of their beers. But it was fun because I got to go in and do lots of tasting and actually got involved in the making process. So that was really good fun, like an unexpected outcome of the project, and a very pleasant one, very pleasing. It's very delicious. We are on the last box, sadly, but the brewery's down the road, so all is not lost. Right, I stopped in the middle of a round. Whoa, what's going on? So we're on question 3 of round 4. Which of these activities did the WI not promote? So there's a list here, listen carefully. Which of these activities did the WI not promote? A, toy making. B, jam making. C, cobbling and leatherwork. D, pig and rabbit clubs. I'd like to know more about that. E, seed potato giveaways. F, committee skills. And G, flower arranging. So have a look on the website once Tim's posted it up. So which of the activities did the WI not promote? Question 4 of round 4. Why are the official colours of the WI purple, green and white? And what connection has this to the singing of Jerusalem? Ooh, testing you there. Oh, you tried one that you bought. Did you buy it at a gig? I want to know who you are. You've got another name on YouTube. Anyway, that's aside. Let's keep the questions going. But I'm glad you bought one, and thanks for supporting. And yes, I absolutely should have some more made up. I am thinking that No Petticoats Here might come back at some point next year, but we can't really make huge plans. Anyway, question 5. By 1919, 4 years, how many WIs were registered in England and Wales? So by 1919, after 4 years of being established, how many WIs were registered in England and Wales? Is it A, 950, B, 1,175, C, 1,400, or D, 2,475? Phew, I hate numbers. I hate reading numbers. My brain just looks at them and just sees Squiggles, just can't cope. And question 6. From the outset, the WI worked to prepare women to take prominent roles in public life. In 1921, a WI member was the first English-born woman and third female to be elected as a Member of Parliament. Proudly known as our Institute MP, what was her name? So from the outset, the WI worked to prepare women to take prominent roles in public life. In 1921, a WI member was the first English-born woman and the third female to be elected as a Member of Parliament. Good question. Brilliant. So the image is up as well, and the questions will come up shortly, and we will then move on to round 5 out of 7 rounds. Now I know who you are. So you haven't drunk it yet, or you have drunk it? I'll respect your anonymity and not give it away. There we go. Well, thanks for joining in. Thanks to everybody who's watching and joining in. It makes it worth it. So we are going to move on to round 5, if we can.
Sorry.
He's got quite a few jobs that he's juggling, so I'll be kind. So this is round 5, which is literature. And these questions were put together by Dr. Alice Kelly. Alice is an academic based in Oxford. Her book, Commemorative Modernisms, Women Writers, Death and the First World War, is coming out this summer with Edinburgh University Press. Looking forward to that one. And you can find out more on her website and on Twitter, and they're all linked on the website, the quiz page on the website. And on Twitter, she's at Dr. Alice Kelly. Doctor is in DR. She shares some interesting things, and I've had the good fortune of meeting Alice a few times now. So, questions for the literature round. Round 5, question 1. Who was the author of the 1935 novel National Velvet, who earlier in her life wrote a memoir of her time as a VAD nurse in a hospital in Woolwich? So looking for the name of the author of the 1935 novel National Velvet, who earlier in her life had written a memoir of her time as a VAD in a hospital in Woolwich. The memoir resulted in her being dismissed from her position at the hospital. Now, I didn't know this, and so I now need to order another book. I hadn't told him that. I was going to wait and announce it live so that somebody could get behind me and support my need for having another book about women's World War I history. So please, will you? Yes, that would be nice.
To be fair, I do have quite a few books as well.
Yeah, many more than me, I should imagine.
I doubt it.
Really? Not sure. Well, you heard. That's pretty much an admission that I'm allowed to have it. Right, next question. Question 3 of round 5. Which poet wrote... Oh, no, I've missed one out. Sorry. Question 2 of the literature round. Which VAD nurse lost a brother, fiancé, and 2 male friends and wrote about it in her 1933 memoir? I have only literally just started this beer, by the way. Which VAD nurse lost a brother, fiancé, and 2 male friends and wrote about it in her 1933 memoir? Question 3. Which poet wrote in her poem The Cenotaph in 1919, "It is all young life. It must break some women's heart to see such a brave, gay coverlet to such a bed"? Is it A, Cicely Hamilton, B, Charlotte Mew, or C, Jessie Pope? So multiple choice. The poet that wrote the poem The Cenotaph in 1919, Cicely Hamilton, Charlotte Mew, or Jessie Pope? Question 4. Septimus Warren Smith is a war veteran in which novel by modernist writer Virginia Woolf? So we're looking for the name of the book. You've got 3 options. A, Jacob's Room, 1922. B, Mrs. Dalloway, 1925. Or C, To the Lighthouse, 1927. So Septimus Warren Smith is a war veteran in which novel by Virginia Woolf? Question 5. Which female propagandist was Wilfred Owen railing against in his poem Dulce et Decorum Est, which I'm sure Tim is going to correct my pronunciation of?
I wouldn't dream of it.
Yeah, he's like this in front of you guys. Right. So you've got a multiple choice of 3. So question 5 is, which female propagandist was Wilfred Owen railing against in his poem Dulce et Decorum Est? I was looking at his face then for reaction. Was it A, Mrs. Humphrey Ward, B, Jessie Pope, or C, May Wedderburn Cannon? And question 6. Which well-known American writer who was known for her novels of high society spent the war devoted to her 3 war charities in and around Paris, touring the front lines and producing a book in 1915 called Fighting France? There's a lot of info there. Let me do that one again. Which well-known American writer who was well known for her novels of high society spent the war devoted to her 3 war charities in and around Paris, touring the front lines and producing a book in 1915 called Fighting France? And we're going to have a slightly different round 6, which I've titled Flanders, and I'll explain a little bit why. So I had the very good fortune when I was researching, I'm not going to say the names, women who worked on the Western Front during the First World War, of being in touch with the wonderful Patrick Van Leen. And so Patrick was researching a particular group of women and men who were in and around Flanders during the First World War. And Patrick himself is based near Newport. That's right, isn't it?
I think he's based in Ghent.
Oh, okay. Maybe I am wrong. Yeah, maybe he's based in Ghent. This is Patrick's book. I will share it again later, but I can't, without giving away an answer, share that completely yet. But Patrick was really kind, and when Tim and I visited the areas where this group of people worked. Sorry, I've just kicked over lots of books. When we visited, Patrick kindly offered to take us around the area and drove us to the places that some of the women worked, and showed us an exhibition that he'd put on in a local museum. And also, we shared a couple of Belgian beers. I'll let you know into that hardly well-known secret. And yeah, there we go. So he was a lovely man, and he did an interview actually for the trailer video for No Petticoats Here. So where are Patrick's questions? Oh, here's the introduction to Patrick. Patrick Van Leen is an independent researcher, exhibition designer, and historical advisor, specialised in World War I. He has published on the subject of the war in Flanders and has acted as historical advisor to the Channel 4 documentary Not Forgotten in 2005 and the BBC and HBO miniseries Parade's End in 2012. During the commemoration years, he designed several World War I exhibitions for the towns of Newport and Ghent. So he's written an introduction because I think Patrick probably comes from a different perspective. I need the introduction.
All right, sorry.
Hadn't finished with the introduction just yet. So it just gives a background, which sort of leads into the question. So I want to share that with you. So the outbreak of war in August 1914 changed everybody's life, and afterwards it would change all conventions in society, many of them to the benefit of women. At first, the British public sympathised massively with poor little innocent Belgium, which was invaded by a brutal German aggressor. Men and women volunteered to the rescue. They had no idea what they were up to, but they were convinced of the righteousness of the cause. Hector Munro, a Scottish psychiatrist who had recently set up a medico-psychological clinic for civilians in London, which would soon prove to be very helpful to shell-shocked soldiers, planned to bring a field ambulance unit to the continent. He envisaged a staff of 5 men and 5 women to start with, and although he had no ambulances nor money for equipment, he had plenty. Can you make that larger? I'm really struggling. He had plenty of volunteers to choose from. For the men, For the men, he went for 2 doctors, a chaplain, and a stretcher bearer. For the women, he chose a certified nurse, a teenage motorcyclist, an American music teacher, a young upper-class lady who spoke fluent French and could drive a car, and an older literary author for the press coverage. He proudly baptised the unit Dr. Hector's Flying Ambulance Corps. It took some time for him to obtain an official request from a recognised Red Cross organisation and the approval of the War Office. The Belgian Red Cross provided him with a much-needed request, and the British Red Cross lent him 2 ambulances, a light truck, and 3 drivers. They were a strange bunch, after all, when they crossed the Channel on the September the 25th, 1914, for Ostend. But time would prove that first impressions are very wrong. The ambulance corps would make a difference, and the women would put their stamp on history. So here are Patrick's questions about that group. So question 1 for round 6. Though the older literary author already returned home in October, she contributed lengthy articles to the British press, and she wrote 6 novels based on her war experiences. The novels were Tasker Jevons in 1916, The Tree of Heaven in 1917, The Romantic in 1920, Anne Seven and the Fieldings in 1922, The Rector of Wick in 1925, and Far End in 1926. What was the name of this author of those 6 novels? Was it Sarah Mcnaughton, May Sinclair, or Edith Wharton? So the author of those 6 novels, Sarah Mcnaughton, May Sinclair, or Edith Wharton. Question 2. Because many wounded soldiers died in the ambulance during the long drive from the front line to the field hospital, 2 of the women set up a dressing station close to the trenches of the Belgian army at Pervyse. Their war diaries were published to fund their first aid post. They were nicknamed the Angels of Pervyse in the British press. In 2017, Royal Mail issued a special stamp to commemorate their war work. I have a few copies myself. Choose their 2 names from the list. Millicent, Duchess of Sutherland, Constance, Duchess of Westminster, Marie Chisholm, Vera Britton, Lady Randolph Churchill, or Elizabeth Knocker. So we're looking for 2 of those names. And if you know your MPH, you might have a few clues. Question 3. The American writer Mary Roberts Rinehart visited the dressing station at Pervyse for the American Red Cross and wrote in 1918 a romantic novel about it. What is the title of that novel? There's a choice of 3. So Mary Roberts Rinehart visited the dressing station at Pervyse and wrote a novel about it. Flanders and Other Fields, The Cellar House of Pervyse, or The Amazing Interlude? Question 4. The American music teacher was Helen Hayes. So her single name, maiden name, if you like, was Hayes. And she was from Cedar Rapids in Iowa. She was married to a well-known left-wing journalist who worked as a war reporter on the Western Front for the New York Tribune and the Century magazine. She happened to be in Paris when the war broke out. Who was her husband? Was it A. Arthur Gleason, B. Philip Gibbs, or C. Ellis Ashmead Bartlett? So the American music teacher that went out with the Corps was Helen Hayes. That's her pre-married name. I hate the word maiden name. And then who was her husband? So what was her surname? Question 5, Lady Dorothy Fielding, 4th child of 10 children that Rudolph Fielding had, Rudolph Fielding being the 9th Earl of Denbigh, followed a VAD crash course in nursing at the St Cross Hospital in Rugby before she volunteered for Dr. Hector Munro's ambulance corps. What does the abbreviation VAD stand for?
So there's a St Cross Hospital in Winchester, which is the only place in the UK where you can go and claim the dole which is like the medieval wayfarers charity. So you can go up and say, I want the dole, and they'll give you a piece of bread and a glass of beer.
And guess who's been to claim that? Next time we will do a football round. If we do another First World War women quiz, we'll do a football round. That's a good call. So I don't know quite where Tim was going with that. Question 6. Dorothy Fielding, accompanied by Dr. Gerrit, a gynaecologist from Dublin, drove an ambulance for French, Belgian and British troops at the front in Newport on the Belgian coast. They functioned as a medical emergency team. Well, we would call them a medical emergency team nowadays. Dorothy returned home in June 1917 to marry Captain Charles Moore of Tipperary in Ireland. Dorothy Fielding was awarded 3 military medals. The Knight of the Order of Leopold II by the Belgian King, the French Croix de Guerre, and which British medal? So Dorothy Fielding was awarded 3 military medals. What was the British medal? Yes, I'm the same, Jenny. It's one of those, oh, I know that name. You're trying to think back to somebody's slides. So questions, that was the last question. Yeah. That was question 6 of round 6. So we've got one more round to go, round 7. Are you having a slurp of something? And how are you doing with the questions? It does seem to be a very low scoring quiz. I'll be honest, if I'd taken part, I would be thinking, I know the answer, but I don't know the answer. I can't remember it. So I'm with you if that's how you're feeling right now. So we've got one more round to go. And can you scroll down on this one? Yeah. The round 7 is called RAF and Wrens. So Women's Royal Air Force and Women's Royal Naval Service. And these questions were kindly put together for us by Louise Bell. So Louise Bell is an independent historian whose work primarily focuses on men who lost limbs during the First World War and the measures put in place to aid them. She did a wider variety of work, including on the Wrens and the RAF, when working at the National Archives as their First World War diverse histories researcher between 2015 and 2018. So you can find out more about Louise on Twitter. She's at Lou Bell. And also you can find her book, Images of the National Archives, Armistice. There's a link for that. It's published by Pen and Sword, and there's a link for that on the NPH quiz part of the website. So do have a look and support Louise's work there. Again, I've had the good fortune to be at conferences with Louise and talk to her about her work, which I've always found fascinating. So
there was a comment on the glass. It's designed so that when you pour in the sediment, it captures in the bottom, so you don't get loads of yeast in your mouth.
Although there is a problem that if you hold the bottom bit goes a bit warm. So there's a design fault with that, I think. Yeah. Right, getting into round 7, the final 6 questions. Question 1. When was the Women's Royal Air Force formed? And we are looking for if you can, a day, a month and a year. But to be honest, some of you might just be pleased to get the year. I think I would. So when was the Women's Royal Air Force formed? Question 2. Who was the first director of the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Wrens? Was it A, Josephine Carr, B, Catherine Furse, or C, Angela Mary Bell? First director of the Wrens. I was very lucky to go and work at Portsmouth at the dockyards, and they had a really good temporary exhibition about the Wrens. which I found very interesting. And it's with their support that I put one of the youth songwriting projects about women's First World War history together. So their archive was really interesting. We took a group of young people who had never been inside an archive before, and they were fascinated that they were allowed to touch all of these artifacts and handle them and find out more. So shout out to them. Question 3. Who was the first member of the Wrens to die on active service? A. Catherine Furze, B. Jenny Theresa Bell, or C. Josephine Carr? So the first member of the Wrens to die on active service. Question 4. In what year were the RAF disbanded? Fairly concise, that one. And question 5. Question 4, we're looking for the year that the RAF disbanded. Question 5. By the end of the First World War, how many women had served in the Wrens? A. 6,700, B. 5,000, or C. 5,500. So how many women served in the Wrens by the end of the First World War? And the last question, which Tim's just removed from my side, the last question, for home service with the RAF, what was the minimum age? So in order to take part in the RAF's home service, what age did you need to be? What was the minimum age? And that is the final question of the final round. How did you get on? Well, we will soon find out. I'm going to be honest when we go through and let you know how few I would have got. Yes, but well done if you're not cheating. Don't worry if you are looking it up. At least you're learning and enjoying it as you go along. It's all good. So I did my first ever online gigs last weekend, and I was umming and ahhing about what stories to share, and I decided I really wanted to share some positive and uplifting ones. So I decided to go back to some songs from No Petticoats Here, which I hadn't played for a while, and I went back to the album and I reminded myself of the sleeve notes and the level of my geekery. So I think albums, I don't know what the longest, I mean, some of you are music supporters, I know. What are the longest sleeve notes you've ever had in an album? Because Tim had to edit this, poor Tim. He had to edit this, and it was initially like, I don't know, into the 100 of pages. So there we go. But it reminded me how much I love these stories and these amazing women, and how I still wish that there was more I knew about. So if you are submitting questions.
Yeah, so just one thing, the feed that you're getting is about a minute behind us actually sort of saying it and transmitting it. So I'll just let you catch up with that. I've pasted into the chat an email address if you want to submit your questions to claim either the winning prize or the BB prize. Then please send it to that email address. Thanks for that. The sleeve notes, it was I think it was 48 pages in the end.
In the end, and that was after editing more than half.
Yeah. So yeah, if you wanted to, there is that table on the web page if you want to cut and paste your answers to that and then email it. But we will in a few minutes go through the answers to the questions. So you get a bit of time to submit that. So at least you want to log into your. I can do it.
To what?
Music app.
Okay, yeah, you can do that. That'd be good. Or my laptop's open next door. If you fancy topping up your beer. Good idea. I've just invited Tim to top up his beer. I think that's never happened in our 10 years together. Anyway, first times, sometimes they take a while, don't they, to come. Would you like to do another No Petticoats Here First World War themed? Oh, thank you. Pub quiz. I'd be up for putting one together. I don't mind how many people, as long as there's a few people who get something out of it. And I got loads out of it. actually. I've learnt loads and managed to convince Tim to let me buy a couple more beers. Freudian slip. Books and beers. So there we go. I'm having a look now in case I can pick up any messages on Twitter. Oh, there we go. Some people aren't signed in, but they're commenting on Twitter, which is nice. So thanks. Nice to see you all, and some of our wonderful quiz masters. You're all brilliant, and and yes, we all need to learn more. I can tell. Yeah, I myself definitely do. Certainly, when people say that I'm an expert because I've been looking at it for the show, I definitely don't feel qualified to be called that at all. Yes. You're all fab. We knew that. We didn't need the pub quiz to know that, but it's nice to be reminded, isn't it? Another quiz, brilliant. Oh, and hello back to the Trench Choir. Lovely that you're there. Thank you so much. Yes, and you guys have been songwriting, I think. I'm sort of tempted to do a suffrage-themed pub quiz next. Well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. Lots to think about. You can message me with your thoughts about what you'd like it to be about, and when. If it's been too early or too late for you guys today, let me know. This can be remedied. Yeah. And we'll have to be creative with our thinking about what categories and what between us, what experts we know who could contribute around. There we go. And if I'm out of No Petticoats beer, what should I drink? That's the most important question, frankly. A cup of tea. Yes. Peppermint tea. We've got peppermint in the garden. And I keep saying I'm going to get it, but I keep not doing it. We can do. Yes, you could. The Trench Choir could contribute some suffrage questions. I like that. That would be good. So I did. I don't know. I know some of you didn't take part because you weren't able, whatever reasons, which is fair enough. But I did a Florence pub quiz. The video's still up, so if you want to find that on the Azania Limited YouTube channel, then you are welcome to have a look through. And there's no pressure because we're not asking you to submit. Yeah. And I was drinking a bottle of Florence, by the way, for the Florence pub quiz that Thornbridge Brewery sent down when they found out about my Florence Nightingale project. So that was a bargain. How long do you think we need to wait for everybody to email their answers? And before you want to hear the answers. Oh dear. A nice Guinness stout. Wow. I think that's so filling. When I was at university, I used to drink Guinness, but just because then I didn't have to buy food and beer, so that it was just filling. But yeah, it is good.
It's a good breakfast drink.
I'm not sure if you heard that. I did used to drink it for breakfast when I was travelling in Ireland at the slight age of 18, some many years ago.
Yeah, many. So the link is in the chat for the Florence quiz. So Louise has lots of books. I have lots of books, but I also have indulged myself in.
And then get his gun out.
It's my World War I artifact. So it's 19.
Don't wave it at me.
It was 1918 or 1917.
I thought it was 18. He's very proud of this. It has featured in the back of some of my Zoom meetings recently, unbeknownst to me at the time. Yeah, and I did get asked about it.
It is deactivated.
It is deactivated.
Legal, so.
Right.
So
I'm going to share some of my books with you because I'm a geek and I love it. And we'll go through some answers. Tim's just going to check that he's received any emails, and then we'll start going through answers. There's absolutely no pressure. You can tell us what you got right, or you don't have to tell us. It's up to you. We are going to start. Oh, I haven't picked that book out actually, but never mind. It must be in another box somewhere. Yeah, okay. Shall we go with the answers for round one? Here we go. Let's dig in. Unintentional. What was the year that the Shell scandal was brought to the public's attention? So you need to go into the questions for this. We're very well organised, as you can tell. So these were Dr. Jenny Richardson's questions about women munition workers. So what year was the Shell scandal brought to the public's attention? A, 1914, B, 1915, C, 1960, D, 1917. The answer is B, 1915. Yeah, it's really small. Thank you. And question 2, why were munitions workers sometimes known as Canary girls? It was, Jimmy's taking the questions and answers away. It was C, because they turned yellow due to the chemicals that they worked with. And question 3, who wrote the fictional novel Munition Mary? It was Brenda Gervin, published in 1918. I did not know that. Question 4, munitionette football teams became quite a phenomenon during the First World War, with one team being particularly famous, and Lily Parr was the star player for this team. And the answer is the Dick Kerr's Ladies. I love this book. I've got a couple others about women's football in the First World War, but that is my favourite. Yes, I wrote about Lily Parr and the Dick Kerr Ladies for one of the songs on NPH, which is called Shoulder to Shoulder. And question 5, which author coined the phrase devil's porridge after seeing one of the processes in explosive production during a visit to the munition factory at Gretna? It was Arthur Conan Doyle, and I did not know that one either.
So that's a museum now, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a really brilliant museum, and I visited on a day that it was very quiet because there was a royal wedding going on, which I wasn't interested in. So I went along to the museum, and I pretty much had the run of the museum to myself, which was great because they had loads of oral histories that I could put the headphones on and listen to. So nobody was there to ruin my experience, which was brilliant. That's my question to you. When have you ever been to a museum and it's been really quiet and that's helped you to engage with the museum and enjoy it even more? Okay, number 6. Upon entering the factory, the munitions workers had to change into their workwear. They were searched for going on the factory floor, and if found in possession of anything metallic or matches, they'd be fined. I was going to say fired. I did read about a couple of people being fired, but they would be fined. What was the standard fine for that? The answer was B, 40 shillings. So that's the answers for round 1. If you missed any, maybe put it in the comments to us. And round 2, which was soldiers and spies. And now I'm 2/3 into my bit. I might find the pronunciation either easier or much more difficult. So question 1, who was given the nickname Nashi Engelskinya by her fellow soldiers? I'd not come across that before, the questions, but I did guess her name. So, Jenny, 4 out of 5, better than 4 out of 6. Yeah, I can't read small things. Great. So, Nashi Engelskinya was the nickname given to Flora Sands. And question 2, which English radiographers were awarded by the Italian government for their efforts during the Battle of Gorizia? It was Helena Gleichen and Nina Hollings. I did not know that one. But now I want to know more about them. See, it's a win-win situation. And question 3, when this doctor offered her services to the RAMC, she was told, "My good lady, go home and sit still. We don't want any petticoats here." And that was where I got the name for the project No Petticoats Here from. And her name was Dr. Elsie Ingalls. And question 4, who created the Russian Women's Battalion of Death? And that was Maria Boshkareva. There are many different pronunciations. I did look this one up, and I'm going with that one. Be decisive. Take firm action. Question 5. This young woman became the first female officer in the Romanian army during the war and was killed in action against the Germans right after uttering the words, "Move forward, boys. Don't give up. You are with me." Her name was Ekaterina, and this one I struggle with as well, Teodoriou. Waiting for Tim to give his input, if the correct pronunciation. I hope I did justice to that wonderful woman. And question 6. Sir John French said the following to this French agent: "We have thousands of men to fill vacant places in the trenches, but not many who could take your place." So who was Sir John French? Can you remember his title? I can't.
Field Marshal.
So he was Field Marshal for the British Army, Expeditionary Force. And the woman who was under their command was Louise de Bettigny. Of course, she features in Catherine's book. There we go.
And there's a photo of her.
And yes, I was very lucky to be in touch with Louise's one of Louise's uncles, nephews. What am I talking about? Great nephew, in fact, who was really kind and shared loads of information which I never could have found in books. Catherine's book's great, her summary paragraph, but I also managed to get, oh my gosh, I love the smell of old books. Is it just me? I managed to get hold of The Story of Louise de Bettigny, which is an old library book. I could just geek out about books too, basically, at this point. And I managed to get a copy. It was being sold on an online selling thing, and it came from America. But I absolutely loved reading it. So must recommend. I don't know how you get a copy of it these days. Right.
I've got one for sale.
He does not have one for sale. And any more of those sorts of jokes, matey. And that'll be the end of your No Petticoats fear. Right. Question. That was it. That's the last of round 2, Soldiers and Spies. How did you get on? Delicious on cornflakes. Wow. Not sure I'm going to try that, to be honest. Okay, round 3, which is the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. So, Sam's questions. Question 1. The first woman to be enrolled into the British Army joined the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. In which year was it formed? The answer is 1917. In March. You didn't have to have March, just 1917. Those were hard, were they? Hard questions. That's the round that I think I'd have done best on, to be honest. But then I have read Catherine's book, so I totally had a heads up with that. Question 2, what's the name of the first Chief Controller overseas of the WAC, who later became Commandant of the Women's Royal Air Force in the First World War and Chief Controller of the ATS in the Second World War? Her name was Helen Gwynne Vaughan. And question 3, the WACs carried out a range of work in France, from telegraphy to cooking, grave maintenance to motor driving. Women in one category had the name Hush WACs. What section of the British Army did they work for? It was the Intelligence Corps. But Sam said she's happy to accept military intelligence, or intelligence department. That's very kind, because I think we might have all guessed that, or maybe not. Question 4, rumours of WAC prostitution and pregnancy in France led to a commission being sent to investigate, and its report exonerated the women. Who knew? Under which law could people be prosecuted in the UK for spreading false reports? It was the Defence of the Realm Act. We'll take Dora as well. That is fine. Because sometimes I think Dora and then I can't remember the words that it stands for. That is acceptable. Question 5, 9 WACs who died in a bombing raid at Abbeville were the first women in the British military to die on active service. 3 WACs received a medal for their actions during the raid. Which medal was it? It was the Military Medal. I'm going to get another geek book out. This is another of my favourites. So I'm going to have to look in there and find their names later on because I don't know them. But we know some of the women in there. Okay, question 6. Which cathedral houses the memorials to the WAC and Queen Mary's Army Auxiliary Corps, the stained glass window, the standard and the books of remembrance? The answer is Guildford Cathedral. I've not been and I absolutely have to go now. So I'm even more happy to have had these questions. Oh, Alice is joining us. Brilliant. Okay, next round. We are on to round 4. And the subject was the Women's Institute in World War One. Jenny, let's see how you get on with these. Brilliant. So question 1. What nationality was Madge Watt, the prime motivator for the establishment of the Women's Institute in the UK during World War One? She was Canadian. Guildford Cathedral wasn't built until World War II, Jenny's saying. Wow, okay.
That's really modern.
Okay, well, we'll have to go. Well, we'll have to go. I mean, we can all go. Let's have a field trip. A pub quiz field trip. Anyway, Jenny, you are really cruel for including this next question because there's absolutely no chance I'm going to pronounce the answer. Where in the UK, you did that on purpose to me, I know you did. Where in the UK was the first Women's Institute established on the 11th of September 1915? It was established at Llanfair in Anglesey in Wales.
Give it the full.
And Jenny says, if you really want to go the whole hog, I mean, to be fair, she has phonetically, but it's just so long. I can't, absolutely can't. Llanfair pŵl gwyn gyr goger u quen drob ul landas silio go go goch. There you go. I'm never trying that again. That's the first and last time. That is difficult. But it's difficult for you as well. So there we go. Question 3. Which of these activities did the WI not promote? A, toy making. B, jam making. C, cobbling and leatherwork. D, pig and rabbit clubs. E, seed potato giveaways. F, committee skills. And G, flower arranging. The answer is you're having fun with us. Oh dear. Oh dear. The answer is actually, it's a trick question. Jenny, you meanie. She's not just being mean to me, she's being mean to you as well. They promoted all of those things.
If you want, I can play that. Welsh.
Go on. Tim's going to attempt to play the Welsh, but I'm not sure if the microphone will pick it up.
Llanfair pwllgwyngill goger chwrndrobws Llantysilio go go goch.
I think I was close. By a mile and a half. Okay, we need to scroll down. Question 4. Why are the official colours of the WI purple, green and white? And what connection has this to the singing of Jerusalem? You could have had a guess at this one, right? Women's history and all. So the answer is because of the link to the suffragette cause. Many of the original organisers and members of the WI had been active members of the WSPU, the Women's Social and Political Union, and carried their suffragette colours into the new organisation. Likewise, Jerusalem, first sung as a WI anthem at the annual meeting in 1925, had been a favoured suffrage song. Question 5. We did hear that as well.
Yeah.
By 1919, after 4 years, how many WIs were registered in England and Wales? You multiple choice, and hopefully you picked C, which is 1,400. The number of WIs registered in England and Wales by 1917. Amazing. 1919. See, I just don't do numbers. Scrambles my brain. And question 6. From the outset, the WI worked to prepare women to take prominent roles in public life. In 1921, a WI member was first was the first English-born woman and the third female to be elected as a Member of Parliament, proudly known as our Institute MP. And her name was Mrs. Margaret Winteringham. And she was returned for the British Liberal Party in, do we call that Louth in Lincolnshire? Louth. She was the Honorary Secretary in Lindsay WI, Lincolnshire. Her husband had been the MP and she was elected to succeed him on his death in 1921, becoming the first ever female Liberal MP. So this is one of the ones where I feel like I've heard that name before and I knew she'd taken over, but I wouldn't have got that name. So hats off if you did. Moving on to round 5, which was, can you see all this argy-bargy going on there? Is that adding to your quiz experience? Thanks, Jeff. I think my Welsh pronunciation leaves a lot to be desired. So we're in
Gondor.
I did sound like I was in the Lord of the Rings. That's what I felt like when I was saying it. So round 5, which was Alice's questions on literature. So who was the author of the 1935 novel National Velvet? Earlier in her life wrote a memoir of her time as a VAD nurse in a hospital in Woolwich. The memoir resulted in her being dismissed from her position at the hospital. Alice, you're here now. Can we still get a copy of that? I want to read it. I want to know what was so shocking in it that she was dismissed. And Jenny, 6 out of 6. Well, I mean, what's your pronunciation like? We could take half a mark off that. Yes, okay. Question 1, the answer is Enid Bagnold, who Alice tells us was the great-grandmother of Samantha Cameron. Who knew? And bonus point if you name the book that she wrote. I have no idea. Well, I do, of course, because the answers are right there. But I would have had no idea. Yes, even with multi-choice, it is hard. I totally agree. The book was called A Diary Without Dates and was written in 1918. I will Google that later and see if it's still available. So question 2, which VAD nurse lost her brother, fiance and 2 male friends and wrote about it in her 1933 memoir? It was Vera Brittain, who wrote Testament of Youth. And is Tim sharing something?
Like he's got a photo of her, but also we were able to use like a facsimile of her handwritten manuscript for perhaps in the album notes.
Yeah, very kindly, Mark Bostridge, who has written an autobiography of Vera Brittain and also published, which I seem to have misplaced. No, it's there. Published this, which is one of my favourite, which is Letters from a Lost Generation, which is a lot of the letters that went between Vera and these men who were so important in her life. And it's really shocking and sad to read, but it really helped me to put together my version of Perhaps. So yeah, that collection is great, absolutely. And also my copy of Testament of Youth, which, if you haven't read it, is pretty incredible. So where are we? Question 3, which poet wrote in her poem, The Cenotaph, in 1919, "It is all young life. It must break some women's hearts to see such a brave, gay coverlet to such a bed." And the answer was Charlotte Mew, who I'm afraid I didn't know of. People often assume that Mew was writing about the London Cenotaph, Alice tells us, but there's evidence to suggest she was in fact writing about the Colchester War Memorial. And I vaguely remember, maybe you told me that, Alice, or somebody had told me that, but I didn't know her name. I would have just guessed it because I wouldn't have thought it was the others. Anyway, question 4. Septimus Warren Smith is a war veteran in which novel by modernist writer Virginia Woolf? And the answer is B, Mrs. Dalloway, which was written in 1925. I'd have had to guess that as well. So question 5, which female propagandist was Wilfred Owen railing against in his poem Dulce et Decorum Est? And the answer was B, Jessie Pope. Pope wrote patriotic pro-war poems which encouraged men to enlist. The first draft was dedicated to Pope. A later version was changed to A Certain Poetess, but this was cut from the poem when it was published. Sorry, cut before the poem was published. And I think you wrote something more interesting in your original message to me, Alice, which I think I've somehow lost along the way of formatting. But I remember that Pope, her poems were still on the A-level First World War poetry syllabus, I remember, until fairly recently. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But there were lots of other women poets whose work could have been used. And I have a volume of poems from the First World War written by women, which is, again, an incredible read and fascinating insight. So question 6. Which well-known American writer, who was known for her novels of high society, spent the war devoted to her 3 war charities in and around Paris, touring the front lines and producing a book in 1915 called Fighting France? And the answer is Edith Wharton, best known for The House of Mirth and The Age of Innocence. We saw some information about Edith Wharton when we were travelling and doing one of the battlefield tours, and I'm just trying to remember where it was, and I can't remember. But I'd forgotten how much I wanted to get one of her books. So there's another one. This is proving to be an expensive evening.
So Wharton Metals make solder that we use.
Yeah? Where's that come from?
I'm just telling you, it's an unusual name.
All right, okay. There we go. The 6th round, are we on, I think?
Yeah.
Yes,
6.
women.
Patrick's. Flanders.
Oh, your Dropbox hasn't updated. That's why I'm struggling, because I rewrote some of the questions. Anyway, let's use that if that's... I don't think so, because I renamed that. I'm a bit worried I might be giving the wrong answers because we had to change some of the order. Patrick sent loads of questions for me to choose from, and I'm a little bit anxious. Can you get the original question sheet on that screen and we can just check?
Where is it?
That's it. You're pointing on it. Yeah,
that's that.
Excuse me. On there, just to go down to Patrick's questions and just check. Sorry about this. Drink interlude for you all. Interesting comments. I'm learning even more from your comments in the chat, which is great. Okay, so can you just check? I'll read through the question in case I've got it right. So we were looking for the name of the literary author who went out with Dr. Hector Munro's Flying Ambulance Corps, who wrote 6 novels and various articles in the British press. And the novels were called Tasker Jevons, The Tree of Heaven, The Romantic, and 7, and The Fieldings, The Rector of Wick, and Far End. And her name was May Sinclair. So we've got a bit of extra info from Patrick, who says that Sarah Mcnaughton was a Scottish author and seasoned war nurse who joined Hector Munro's corps for a short time and wrote 2 war diaries about her experiences. And then the American novelist, who we've already heard about in the previous round, Edith Wharton, was living in Paris and wrote her memoirs down after. And question 2, because many soldiers, just check this one, because many soldiers died in the ambulance during the long drive from the front line to the field hospital, 2 of the women set up a dressing station close to the trenches of the Belgian army at Pavise. Their war diaries were published to fund their first aid post. They were nicknamed the Angels of Pavise in the British press. In 2017, the Royal Mail issued a special stamp to commemorate their war work. So their names were Elsie Knocker, or Elizabeth Knocker, and Marie Chisholm. So the Duchess of Sutherland set up a hospital near Dunkirk. The Duchess of Westminster organised one at Le Touquet, and Vera Brittain was a VAD. Lady Randolph Churchill was Winston Churchill's mother, just to clear that up. Question 3. The American writer Mary Roberts Reinhardt visited the dressing station at Pavise for the American Red Cross and wrote in 1918 a romantic novel about it. What's the name of the novel? Is it Flanders and Other Fields, the cellar house of Pavese, or the amazing interlude? And I have to be honest and say that I would have done all right in this round because I know Patrick and his work. I've read his book, and he's told me a lot about the women. And I also managed to finally get a copy of that well after the end of No Petticoats Here's touring was done. But I'd wanted Elsie Knocker's, one of Elsie Knocker's autobiographies. So I knew it wasn't Flanders and Other Fields for that reason. Yes. And just another quick reminder whilst I'm digging around on the floor of Patrick's book, which is about Dorothy Fielding. So have I given you the answer to that one? Yes. Question 4. The American music teacher was Helen Hayes. She was married to a well-known left-wing journalist who worked as a war reporter on the Western Front. She happened to be in the war in Paris when the war broke out. Who was her husband? It was Arthur Gleason. The other two are English war correspondents who were also embedded in Dr. Hector Munro's Flying Ambulance Corps, but they didn't marry one of the women. And question 5, Lady Dorothy Fielding, 4th child of Rudolph Fielding, the 9th Earl of Denbigh, followed a VAD crash course in nursing at the St Cross Hospital in Rugby before she volunteered for Dr. Hector Munro's Ambulance Corps. What does the abbreviation VAD stand for? Voluntary Aid Detachment. Question 6, Dorothy Fielding accompanied Dr. Gerrits, a gynecologist from Dublin, and she drove an ambulance for the French, Belgian and British troops at the front in Newport on the Belgian coast. Dorothy returned home in June 1917 to marry. She was awarded 3 military medals, Knight of the Order of Leopold II by the Belgian King, the French Croix de Guerre, and which British medal? It was the military medal, and it was awarded to her by King George V at Windsor. And there is an entry, there is an entry in the book for Dorothy Fielding. I need to go back into this book. Don't you have a copy of? No, I don't have a copy, Jenny. I've not managed to get round to it. It's terrible. It's on my list. And I apologise profusely, having met you a number of times, but I'm not sure I met you when you were selling them, but I should have just gone ahead and got one. Yes, so that's going to be my summer reading. There's at least 5 books now. So I will get a copy, and then next time I see you, Jenny, I will have to ask you to sign it for me. So we are on the final round.
Yep.
Yes, about RAFs and Wrens. So question 1, when was the Women's Royal Air Force formed? And it was the 1st of April, 1918.
So Jenny, just question 3. So American writer Mary Roberts Reinhardt was in the dressing station at Pavese and wrote 1918 a romantic novel, and the answer was The Amazing Interlude.
You're sure? I don't think you were doing the hard, that we wouldn't have been a hard sell on me, but I don't think you had them with you when I have met you. Did you have them with you at the conference at the Glasgow Women's Library? I don't think you did, but my mistake if you did, because I should have bought one. Although I was trying to travel light because I had the guitar and the kit for the performance and everything. Anyway. Yes, Elsie and Mari, Catherine. Thanks for taking part, Catherine, and you saying that you have to go. And all the other lovely comments. Bring back No Petticoats Here. Would there be an audience for it in 2021, do you think? Maybe we can try. That would be fun. I'd love to. Okay, and question 2 of round 7. Who was the first director of the Women's Royal Naval Service? It was B, Catherine Furze. Question 3, who was the first member of the Wrens to die on active service? I didn't know this one. C, Josephine Carr. Next question, in what year were the RAF disbanded? I'm sure that's probably the correct grammar, and it's my brain that can't work it out. In what year were the RAF disbanded? It was 1920. By the end of the First World War, how many women had served in the Wrens? It was C, 5,500. Incredible. And the last question for home service with the RAF, what was the minimum age? It was 18 years. Yes, prizes to everyone who tried. Totally agree. Thank you so much. Whether you got 0 or anything near 36, I certainly wouldn't have done. Yes, I just think you're brilliant. Thanks for taking the trouble to find out more about these incredible women and getting stuck in and drinking along or just playing along or whatever you were doing. Really appreciate it. We will mark any answers and give you feedback appropriately, but I wouldn't be surprised if people decided not to submit. They were very difficult. I totally agree. But thank you for playing. Hopefully you learned something a lot. I learned a lot. Hopefully you've now got loads of books. Next time somebody says, what should I get you as a present? You've got a list. I mean, this is all useful stuff. Right, we will log out, but thanks again. 21 of 42. That's like 50%. That's good going.
Actually managed to work that out.
What?
50%.
I really am bad with numbers. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll keep you posted on Twitter. It seems like people have picked this up from Twitter, so we'll keep you posted. If you wanted to get involved with another pub quiz, if you've got any suggestions, I'll just go by majority, whether you want another First World War or whether it'd be good to do a suffrage related one. So brilliant stuff. And stay well and stay safe and stay in touch, and we'll see you again. Bye.